She gave a hungry child something to eat at the charity gala and was fired on the spot. The next morning, 3 sleek black SUVs rolled to a stop in front of the small diner where she worked. It turned out that the boy's father was the most dangerous mafia boss in the city, and his son would refuse to eat anything unless she was there with him. Emily Carter stood behind the buffet in the grand hall of the Evergreen Hall Hotel, trying to keep a professional smile, despite her legs feeling like they might give out. 4 relentless hours without a break. Carrying trays, ladling food, bowing to wealthy guests attending the annual Seattle Children's Heart Charity Gala. Sparkling gowns, diamonds, black ties, endless champagne, and plates of food worth more than a month of Emily's rent. She needed this job, even if temporary, even if hourly, because her mother lay at home with stage 2 diabetes. A new prescription on the table with no clue where the money would come from. More shrimp. Please. I don't have all day. A woman with an emerald necklace worth a car extended her plate without looking up. Yes. Ma'am. Emily's voice had switched to automatic the Teenan. Hollow. Leaving only survival instincts. Then she saw the boy, a child of about 8, sitting alone at table 12. Near the glass wall overlooking the snowy garden. No one by his side. No one speaking to him, while other children laughed and played with their parents. He just stared at the empty plate before him, his gaze quiet, trying not to let anyone notice he existed. The crystal lights reflected off the metal braces on his legs as he shifted in his chair. Awkward and uncomfortable, Emily glanced around. Where were his parents, who brought him here, a few steps away? A woman in a nurse's uniform was absorbed in her phone, paying no attention to the boy. Excuse me. Emily approached gently. Does this boy need something to eat? He's fine. The woman didn't look up. He has to wait. Wait for what Emily asked, though a tightening in her chest warned her of rising irritation. For his father. That's the order. The nurse's voice was cold. No one is to be served until told. Emily froze. She had grown up with a mother with diabetes, always adhering to strict eating schedules. She understood medical rules. But this wasn't about health. This was control. This was power. She turned back to the boy. He was watching the other children eat cake, hands gripping the edge of the table, eyes betraying the longing he tried to hide. Don't. The nurse's voice rang out as Emily looked back. You should know your place. Emily had never been good at knowing her place. She returned to the buffet, ladled a steaming bowl of pumpkin soup, added a soft roll, easy to swallow, allergy-free, and quietly crossed the ballroom. Hey there. She sat beside the boy, lowering herself to meet his eyes. I'm Emily. I noticed you look hungry. This soup is really good. My mother used to make it this way whenever it was cold. The boy looked at her, suspicion in his eyes. Up close, she saw he was thin, small hands clutching the hem of his shirt, as if afraid of taking up too much space. What's your name, Noah? He whispered, as if afraid to be heard. That's a beautiful name. It means hope. Emily smiled. I think you should eat it while it's hot. Soup isn't good when it's cold. Need some help? No. I can do it myself. His voice steadied slightly, as Noah lifted his spoon. The nurse appeared instantly. What are you doing? I'm working. Emily stood, positioning herself between the woman and the boy, serving food. Don't give it to him. Not without permission. Do you know who his father is? I don't care who his father is. He's hungry. I'm feeding him. That's my job. The sound of the spoon hitting the bowl came from behind her. Noah had started eating. The nurse's eyes shifted from white to red. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. Perhaps, Emily said softly. But at least one child is having dinner. What happened next was swift. Emily's manager and the event coordinator rushed over, eyes wide with horror at the mention of the name Noah D'Angelo. The room went silent. Music faded. All eyes turned to them. You fed Dominic D'Angelo's son without an order. Emily had never heard the name. But the expressions around her made it clear. She was being dragged out of the gala through the kitchen. No thanks. No, apologies. only the snow falling outside the backyard, and a freezing sense of bewilderment in her chest. She removed her apron, the name Emily Carter Evergreen Catering glinting under the kitchen lights. People turned away, but when she looked back, she saw Noah. He was eating, and for the first time all evening, he smiled. She left the hotel into the snowy night, sitting on the cold concrete steps, wondering how she would scrape together money for her mother's medicine. Fired for feeding a child, for doing the right thing. Emily smiled faintly, shook her head. At least Noah had soup. She didn't know that in just 12 hours, her life would change forever. Emily walked back to her small apartment before dawn. Snow thick, wind biting at her collar like a reminder that reality still held her captive. Her thin work shoes were soaked, each step sticking to the ground. No train ran past midnight, and she lacked the patience to wait. Opening the creaky door to the third-floor apartment she shared with her mother, the smell of disinfectant and reheated soup hit her immediately. Her mother, Linda, was still awake, sitting on the worn sofa, a thin blanket over her shoulders, hands trembling slightly from low insulin. "You're home," her voice weak but concerned. Emily nodded, not daring to tell her what had just happened. She knelt to remove her shoes, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Have you eaten a little soup?" "Don't worry. I've eaten." Emily handed her mother a warm water bottle. For a moment, their eyes met, and Linda understood. No questions needed. No words exchanged. A mother who had lived through days of being overlooked understood the resigned look in her daughter's eyes. After helping her mother to bed, Emily sat alone in the kitchen. Just the small light and the unpaid prescription bill. She checked her email. Nothing but a cold apology from the catering HR department, informing her that her contract was terminated immediately due to serious violation of VIP service rules. No mention of the child. No mention of his hunger. Only the word violation. She put her phone down, hands clasped on the table. Fear crept in, not just for losing her job, but because for the first time in months, she had done the right thing and was punished for it. She was not a hero, just an ordinary server, scraping by in an expensive city where kindness was considered a hindrance. Jet Noah's eyes, when he looked at the soup, as if it were the only kindness he had ever received in his life, remained vivid in her mind. It reminded Emily of herself as a child, when her mother borrowed endlessly to buy the first vial of insulin, and a neighbor brought hot soup because their fridge was empty. She remembered that feeling gratitude mixed with shame, relief, yet feeling like a burden. Noah's gaze mirrored that. Emily closed her eyes, wondering if she could go back to that moment. Would she do anything differently, if she had known a single bowl of soup would cost her the job? Income. Perhaps even her apartment and her ability to care for her mother. Would she have ignored the hungry child? The answer, painful as it was, remained no, because to do otherwise would mean betraying herself. She was not the kind of person to turn away from a lonely, disabled child for fear of reprimand. She would not become the kind of person this system produced compliant, silent, blind to injustice. But the price was steep. Near dawn, she made herself a cup of ginger tea, sipping slowly to soothe the burning throat from restrained tears. She did not cry. She did not allow herself to cry. She simply sat there, listening to the heater's creaks and the first bus rumbling outside. She wondered if she was foolish to believe that doing right was enough, that being good alone would make the universe smile. But then she remembered Noah's smile, a disabled child, placed alone at a lavish party where everyone posed for photos and raised glasses for charity. Yet no one truly saw him. Only a bowl of soup, a shared gaze, a touch of kindness. Emily checked the clock. It was nearly time for her morning shift at the small diner where she worked. Still a job, making coffee and serving sandwiches to construction workers and bus drivers. But at least there, no one would fire her for feeding a child. She stood, changed into her uniform, tied back her hair. In the mirror, she saw a woman exhausted, battered, but still standing. She did not know what the future held. But she knew one thing. She had no regrets. Not for the soup. Not for Noah. And if tomorrow demanded another act of kindness, she would do it again. No matter the cost. The small diner on the corner of 11th Avenue and Pine Street opened at 6 in the morning. Emily had arrived at 5:40, coffee pot in hand, hair teed neatly, her uniform still carrying the faint scent of disinfectant from the day before. She tried not to think about the gala. Not about Noah. Not about the horrified look on the coordinator's face when she had inadvertently offended Seattle's most powerful family. She focused only on her mother, on the prescription bills, and on holding on to this shift at all costs. A few regulars came in, familiar construction workers, the elderly couple who visited 3 times a week, and a young man absorbed in his laptop. Everything was normal, calm, manageable, until the roar of engines echoed outside the glass doors. One black SUV stopped, then a second, then a third. The entire diner went silent. A worker froze mid-bite. The elderly couple gripped each other's hands tighter. Emily set down the coffee pot, a chill running through her. The men in black suits stepped in first. Their eyes did not wander, did not hesitate. They observed, evaluated, guarded. Not police, not FBI, not ordinary men. And then he entered. Dominic D'Angelo needed no introduction. All of Seattle knew the name, though no one dared speak it aloud. A man in his 40s, tall, with the calm gait of someone accustomed to power. The charcoal gray suit fit him perfectly. His eyes were cold, void of any emotion. A man unaccustomed to refusal. Emily stood behind the counter, trying to keep her hands from shaking. Dominic scanned the room, and then his gaze settled on her. Emily Carter. His voice was not loud, but it carried a decisiveness that silenced the diner. "That's me," she replied, her voice smaller than she wished. "We need to talk." "I'm working," Emily said. Dominic pulled out his wallet, placed a stack of bills on the counter. "For your time." The diner owner peeked out from the kitchen, face pale. "Emily, you should go." Emily wiped her hands on her apron and stepped away from the counter, heart tight with caution. Dominic motioned for her to follow him to a vacant table by the window, flanked by 2 bodyguards. She sat, heart pounding as though she had just run a marathon. "I know you were the one who fed my son last night," Dominic began, without preamble. "I'm not here to scold. I'm here to make an offer." Emily said nothing. Dominic continued. "After they kicked you out of the gala, Noah refused to eat anything. All night. This morning, too. He only asked one thing. Where was the girl with the soup?" Emily swallowed hard. Dominic placed his hand on the table, not threatening, but commanding. "I need you to take care of Noah. Live with him. Help him eat. Play. Live like a normal child. I will pay you fully. $200,000 a year. Room and board. 24/7 protection." Emily felt as if she had been struck. 200,000, a sum she had never dared to imagine. But this was not merely an invitation. It was a doorway into another world, dangerous, uncertain, cold. "You think I'm a professional nanny?" She forced a smile. "I'm just a server. I don't know your world." Dominic stared, analyzing her every reaction. "You are the first person who made Noah eat, made him laugh, made him lift his head and speak. I don't care about degrees or credentials. I only know he needs you." Emily clenched her fists, unable to meet his eyes. "I can't. I'm sorry. I don't belong in your world. I just want to live quietly. Work. Care for my mother." Dominic tilted his head. "Do you think I am a monster? I think you are someone who can silence a room at the mere mention of your name. And I don't want to be part of that." Dominic leaned back, his eyes no longer razor sharp, but tinged with something weary. "Just 1 week. If after that you want to leave, I won't stop you. No obligations. No consequences." Emily stood. "I'm sorry. I can't." She turned away, heart racing. Dominic said nothing, did not threaten, did not grasp, but his gaze followed her, cold as steel, hiding something more dangerous than anger concern. When Emily stepped inside, the diner buzzed back to life as if awakening from a dream. The 3 SUVs started, drove away as if they had never been there. But Emily knew her life had turned a corner. Whether she walked through it or not, Emily hadn't slept a wink that night. She lay on the old sofa, eyes wide, mind spinning with hundreds of questions. She had refused Dominic D'Angelo's offer, firmly and decisively, yet his silence, the way he had not become angry or issued commands as she expected, unsettled her more than anything. His words echoed in her mind like a quiet drumbeat. No one needs you. She could not forget the boy's eyes, could not forget the sound of the spoon against the soup bowl and the tiny, fragile smile, delicate as a spider's web. This was not a job. This was a child clinging to a rare fragment of kindness in a cold world, and Emily knew that feeling all too well. The next morning, she left a note for her mother, saying she had been invited to care for a child in-house for a few days and would call each day. She left out details, simply framing it as an opportunity that might help pay for medication sooner. Then she picked up the phone, dialing the number the bodyguard had given her. An hour later, the familiar black SUV appeared again. No one spoke for the 30-plus-minute ride out of the city center, weaving through the gated mansions of North Seattle, when the car stopped before a massive iron gate, guarded by 2 men in leather jackets. Emily's hands grew cold. The gates opened slowly. Inside was a classic gray stone mansion. High roofs, dense fencing, windows reflecting the gray Seattle sky. The house looked as though it had stepped out of a dark classic film. Emily entered the main hall. Vaulted ceilings, a crystal chandelier casting warm yellow light, though it could not dispel the chill in the air. An elderly woman, slender and stern-faced, approached. "I am Martha Green, the head housekeeper. Everything in this house goes through me." Her voice calm but firm. "Follow me." Emily tried to stay composed as she was led down a long, dark wood corridor adorned with oil paintings. The silence was such that she could hear her own footsteps. "You will stay in the guest room on the 2nd floor, near the young master's room," Martha said as she opened the door to a neat, warmer than expected room. Large bed, pale blue linens, window overlooking the snow-covered garden. "The boy's schedule will be sent this evening. You will handle his meals, conversations, and play. You may not take him outside without permission. Do not ask about the master. Do not leave the designated area." Emily nodded. Everything felt as if she were a piece of furniture. No room for emotions. She was only temporary, on trial, but she was here for Noah, for the look in his eyes when he held the soup spoon. She unpacked a few simple clothes into the wardrobe, then sat on the bed, taking a deep breath. A knock came. It was a bodyguard. The large man named Jake she had briefly met at the diner. "The master requests your presence in the dining room." Emily followed him down the grand curved staircase, through a heavy wooden door into a dining room like a painting-long table. Leather chairs, stone fireplace burning. Dominic D'Angelo sat at the head of the table, eyes sharp, watching every movement. Noah sat beside him, clutching his fluffy teddy bear, legs still in braces. When he saw Emily, his face lit up, tilting his head slightly. "Miss Emily," she smiled, stepping forward. "Hello. Noah, how are you today? Better? Hungry?" Dominic looked at her, then gestured for Martha to bring out the soup. As Emily helped Noah with a napkin and placed the spoon in his small hand, she saw his trembling from nervousness. Then he began to eat, spoon by spoon, quietly, with no scolding, no reproach, just a child gradually reclaiming trust in the world. And Dominic simply watched, saying nothing. When the meal ended, Martha cleared the table, and Dominic rose, his tone cold as he left. "1 week. If Noah still smiles like this, you may stay." Emily watched his figure disappear down the long corridor, a strange mixture of anxiety and wonder rising in her chest, as if she had just stepped into the first chapter of a book she did not know she wanted to read. But one thing she knew for certain: the boy needed her. And for that, she would stay. The first morning in the D'Angelo mansion began with an unusual silence. No traffic. No voices calling. No radio news, like in the small apartment where Emily had once lived. Only the chirping of sparrows outside and distant footsteps echoing through the wood-floored hall. Emily awoke very early, partly from the unfamiliarity, partly from restlessness. She donned a simple sweater, tied back her hair, and quietly opened the door, tiptoeing down the hall to find Noah. No guidance. No schedule. Just the vague instructions Martha had promised. Everything here operated in a way outsiders could not easily understand. As she descended to the ground floor, morning light streamed through the large windows, casting gentle patches on the floor. She heard faint laughter, almost imperceptible. From the library, Emily followed the sound and stopped to see Noah sitting alone on the large carpet, playing with antique train models. He wore a sky-blue sweater, his brown hair neat, face absorbed, as if the whole world consisted only of the rails and the tiny locomotive running around. Emily approached and gently sat down beside him. "Good morning." "Noah, did you sleep well?" The boy looked up, his hazel eyes sparkling with life. "Yes. I dreamed I was driving a real train. It went through the forest." "That sounds amazing. I've never had a dream like that." Noah smiled and returned to his models. A warm silence settled over the room. Emily let him lead the conversation, never interrupting, only listening and encouraging. She asked about the names of each car, why the engine bore the letter N, and Noah recounted every detail with a passion, as if he had finally found someone who truly cared about his tiny world. When Martha called them for breakfast, Emily took Noah's hand to guide him down the stairs. Though he was used to moving with his leg braces, he still needed gentle support to maintain his balance. The breakfast table was simple, nothing like the previous evening. Only three were present: Noah, Emily, and Dominic. The man was already seated at the head of the table, reading the newspaper, his steaming coffee beside him. He did not look up as they entered. "Where would you like to sit?" Emily asked. Noah glanced at Dominic and pointed to the chair opposite him. "There." Emily pulled out the chair for him and then sat beside him. Martha brought toast, scrambled eggs, and a bowl of diced fruit. Emily carefully checked Noah's portions, asking if he wanted more, then let him choose for himself. Dominic paused his reading, eyes tracking her every subtle motion. No words were spoken, yet Emily could feel the sharp, silent scrutiny. She was not afraid, but she could not ignore it. Every word, every action was measured, as if walking a tightrope over two cliffs. Noah began to eat, slowly at first, but clearly at ease. He was neither forced nor hurried. And most importantly, he was seen. Dominic seemed to notice this as well. After a few minutes, he set the newspaper down and looked directly at Emily. "Noah hasn't eaten fruit since my wife passed." Emily met his gaze. For the first time, she saw something that was not ice. Perhaps sorrow, perhaps fatigue. She said nothing, simply smiled gently, and continued conversing with Noah. After breakfast, as she took Noah outside to the garden to play under the pale morning sun, Dominic remained inside, stirring his now cooled coffee. He watched through the window, observing his son laughing openly with the young woman whose neat hair had just helped him finish breakfast without a single push. Jake, Dominic's trusted bodyguard, stepped closer. "Things seem better than expected." Dominic did not reply immediately. He spoke in a low, measured voice. "I've tried 10 people, doctors, therapists, tutors. None got him to speak more than 3 sentences. She has no formal qualifications, but Noah trusts her." Jake nodded. And now, Sir Dominic followed the small figure of Emily in the garden, her hands steadying Noah's as he walked across the grass. Keep her, at all costs. The second day in the mansion began with an unusual silence. Emily woke early, preparing a simple breakfast for Noah: oatmeal and a few slices of soft steamed apple. As directed by the therapist's notes she had read in the medical file left in her room, she wanted Noah to eat properly, easily digestible food. But upon entering the kitchen, she encountered Martha Green, the veteran housekeeper, whose gaze could freeze a person in midsummer. "I don't think you have the authority to alter the young master's menu," she said, hands still slicing bread, each cut asserting her power. "I'm not interfering. I just want to prepare something good for Noah," Emily replied gently. "I've read the doctor's notes." Martha looked up, eyes narrowing. "Here. You may not act on personal judgment. Any changes must go through me or the master." Emily nodded, swallowing her retort. She had not come here to argue, but she was not a puppet, merely nodding in submission. The tension did not end there. When Emily took Noah outside for his morning walking exercises, the gardeners paused, staring at them with curiosity. One scoffed, deliberately speaking loudly, thought the server would be here a few days. "I didn't expect she'd play stepmother." Emily pretended not to hear, but Noah reacted differently. He hesitated, eyes downcast, lips pressed tight. She knelt beside him. "Are you okay? I don't like them. I don't like the way they speak either. But you know what? They are not the ones deciding who you are. You understand that?" "Right." Noah nodded lightly and continued walking. His steps were slower, but more confident than the day before. Emily felt relief. In just a few days, he had begun to open his heart. While the staff continued to display their disapproval, Emily persevered. She painted with Noah, read fairy tales, played imaginary games with train models, even taught him a few Spanish words she had learned in high school. She always let him lead, never forcing or controlling. She let Noah make mistakes, let him laugh when he drew a sun-colored purple, or named a toy dragon Sir Many Beards. Each time Noah laughed, Emily felt as though a heavy stone was lifting from his heart, piece by piece. On the fourth evening, Dominic happened to pass the living room while Emily and Noah were building a Lego castle. He stood at the doorway silently. Noah, absorbed in his storytelling, did not notice his father, describing to Emily a kingdom where knights rode dragons and could defeat monsters without strong legs. Emily laughed softly, nodding. "Then you must be better than any knight." Dominic said nothing, but when Emily looked up, she caught his gaze, no longer scrutinizing, not supervising, but a flicker of surprise, as if witnessing something he had not dared to hope for. Yet tranquility could not last long. That afternoon, as Emily led Noah back to his room after his walking exercises, she discovered his orthopedic shoes were not in their usual place. The wardrobe was locked. When she asked Martha, the housekeeper replied coldly, "You don't need to manage those. The young master has someone for that." Emily tried to remain calm, but seeing Noah sitting on the bed in thick socks, hesitantly aware he could not practice walking that day, her chest tightened. She went downstairs to confront Martha. "I need Noah's shoes. They've been sent for inspection. According to schedule." "You didn't inform me." No one said a word. "I am his direct caregiver. You are just on trial, but I am helping Noah progress every day." "Who else is doing that?" Martha paused, then turned away. That night, Emily let Noah sit drawing in his room while she went downstairs to make tea. Dominic was already there. She was surprised but did not show it. "Do you know they've been preventing me from helping your son?" Dominic looked up, his voice calm but firm. "I know, and you've done nothing I'm observing. Noah needs more than observation. He needs support, encouragement, understanding. I don't care who dislikes me here, but if they harm Noah through passivity or coldness, I will not remain silent." Dominic was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Very well. Starting tomorrow, you will have full authority over Noah's schedule. I will handle the rest." Emily looked at him, for the first time seeing Dominic not as a fearsome, powerful Mafia figure, but as a father quietly learning to trust. From the moment Dominic granted Emily full control over Noah's schedule, the atmosphere in the mansion began to shift. Though no one spoke of it, the staff's glances persisted, but no one dared stop her. Most importantly, Noah had truly opened his heart. Each morning he woke with eager eyes, no longer fearful of mealtime or hesitant stepping into the garden. Every time Emily appeared, his smile blossomed naturally, unforced. They began to share mornings together, Emily teaching him small games. From baking cookies to folding paper boats, she never forced learning, allowing him to be himself, to play, to laugh, to make mistakes. One afternoon, while drawing under the veranda, Noah looked up and asked softly but firmly, "Are you my mother?" The question stopped Emily in her tracks. She looked into those innocent eyes, then shook her head gently. "No, I'm not your mother, but I care for you very much. Very, very much." Noah nodded as if he understood. "My mother is gone, but I think, if she were alive, she would be like you." Emily turned away, pretending to adjust the paintbrush, hiding the dampness in her eyes. That afternoon, Dominic returned home earlier than usual. He said nothing, simply standing on the veranda, hands in his pockets, watching the two of them under the awning as they colored dragons, trains, and flying mountains across their pages. Emily felt his gaze but did not pause. She let Noah continue recounting his imaginary kingdom, where knights need not be strong yet, are still respected. When the boy ran inside to fetch more paper, Dominic stepped closer, the slanting afternoon sun catching his shoulder. "The boy no longer hides himself in his room," he said quietly. Emily did not turn, replying softly, "Because now he feels safe." Dominic nodded, eyes calm. "I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to. Noah is the only one who needs thanks." "Are you doing this for money?" The question held no sarcasm, only sincerity. Emily glanced at him. "At first, perhaps for money, but not anymore. I stay for Noah." Dominic looked at her for a long moment. Then, for the first time since they met, he smiled. Very small, very brief, but enough for Emily to notice. That evening, they had dinner together with Noah. No Martha, no bodyguards, just the three of them. Dominic sat at the head of the table as usual, but this time he set the newspaper aside. When Emily recounted how Noah had stood on his own without holding her hand, Dominic laughed. Really, he's never done that before, because before, he thought he would be scolded if he fell. Emily replied, her voice light as the breeze. Dominic nodded, eyes softening. "I have been too strict. Not strict. Fearful. Afraid of losing yet another thing." Dominic did not deny it. He took a sip of wine, eyes distant, as if conversing with a nameless memory. After the meal, Dominic escorted her to the stairs. Before Emily ascended, he paused. "Have you ever wondered why Noah chose you?" Emily thought for a moment. "Because he sensed I, too, Unch felt small. Children can feel that, especially those who have been hurt." Dominic nodded slowly. "You are right." That night, when Emily returned to her room, Noah was already asleep, clutching the worn teddy bear she had stitched by hand the day before. She watched him quietly, closing the door with care. She knew the bond was more than between a caregiver and a child. It was a meeting of two lonely souls. And elsewhere in the mansion, a father was learning to open his heart again, thanks to a young woman with nothing in her hands but steadfast kindness and a heart unafraid to be vulnerable again. Noah's transformation was no longer hidden. He laughed more, ate regularly, and began writing small stories in the brown, leather-bound notebook Emily had given him. He called it the Dragon Book, documenting dreams, adventures, and worlds where he could fly without braces. But as a child began to live again, not everyone welcomed it. Kendra, Dominic's personal assistant of nearly 7 years, felt herself being pushed out of the influence she once tightly controlled. She had disliked Emily from the start, dismissing a poor, unqualified server, suddenly given authority over the child's schedule, meals, and even the attention the master paid. Dominic spent more time at home, no longer leaving all care for Noah to nurses and therapists. He actively participated in meals, asked about Noah's drawings, and the dragons that now adorned the walls. What infuriated Kendra most was the way Dominic looked at Emily, no longer with caution, but with something softer, deeper, and threatening to her position in the house. One morning, as Emily led Noah to the south garden to paint landscapes, Kendra entered Dominic's office as usual, holding a folder, but inside were photographs printed from hidden cameras placed around the mansion. "I think you should see this," she said, placing the folder on his desk. Dominic looked up from his computer, expression unreadable. He opened the folder. The images were blurry, yet it was clear Emily was sitting very close to Dominic, her hand brushing his shoulder in a moment along the corridor. Another showed Emily and Noah hugging and laughing in the backyard, though the camera angle suggested Emily was whispering something secretive to him. "What is she trying to say here?" Dominic asked, his voice low. Kendra crossed her arms. "I just find it unusual that a woman who's been here only a few weeks has so much influence over the young master and over you. You may believe she's good, but you know nothing of her past. No records, no references, and these images could be misinterpreted if seen outside." Dominic frowned slightly. He did not respond immediately, but his hand lingered on the photos a beat longer. The next day, Emily noticed the scrutinizing glances return. Former staff began whispering as she passed. A young chef who had once been friendly now avoided her gaze, even at breakfast. When Dominic entered, he merely gave a cold nod, then sat reading the newspaper, no longer speaking with her or Noah as usual. Emily felt the change keenly, as if a thin layer of ice had quietly drifted across the atmosphere between them. That evening, when she entered the dining room late to fetch a drink for Noah, she overheard two kitchen staff speaking quietly. "I heard she was fired from 3 previous jobs for flirting with the boss, and for letting someone else take credit for her work. Scary." Emily froze behind the door, heart racing. She stepped back, exhaling, feeling the familiar pang of being an outsider, of being doubted, of being regarded as not belonging. She recalled her past, always on the margins, where every good thing she touched dissolved simply because people could not trust someone rising from the bottom. She had thought this place would be different, that if she did right, if she was kind, she would be accepted. But apparently, a single rumor could topple everything. She was about to turn away when the door opened. Dominic stood there, his eyes no longer soft as before. "Are you free?" he asked decisively. Emily nodded, unable to find words. He gestured for her to follow him into the office. Once the door closed, Dominic placed the photo folder on the desk. "Do you have anything to say about this?" Emily looked at the images, then met his eyes. "They are real, but not the truth." Dominic was silent, fists tightening. Emily continued, "I don't need you to believe me. I just want you to see Noah. If he changes, it is not because I did something wrong, but because for the first time, he has someone truly there for him." Dominic studied her for a long moment, then nodded slightly. Yet she knew a seed of doubt had been planted, and someone, perhaps, was hoping it would grow. Since that tense conversation in Dominic's office, everything around Emily began to shift subtly but unmistakably, like snow slowly melting under the winter sun. She was not fired, nor given any specific orders, but a quiet authority settled over her every action as if an invisible sentence had been passed. The household staff no longer greeted her as before. Martha spoke only when necessary, curt and colder than ever. Those who once smiled as she passed in the hall now looked away or hurried off. Kendra did not speak. Yet whenever she appeared, her gaze swept over Emily with a quiet satisfaction, as if savoring a victory already planned. Emily felt acutely that, though no one said it aloud, she had become superfluous in the very place she had helped fill with laughter. Worse, Dominic nearly vanished from the shared spaces. He no longer joined breakfast, nor visited the garden where Noah and Emily usually played. She did not know if it was due to work or simmering suspicion in his mind. She only knew that each passing day, Noah's eyes revealed increasing anxiety. The boy noticed the change. Children always notice. He began to grow silent, no longer eagerly running out to greet Emily each morning. no longer drawing, sometimes just sitting, staring out the window at the backyard, swaying in the wind. One afternoon, as Emily led Noah to the garden as usual, he suddenly stopped, then asked in a small, almost whispering voice, "Miss Emily, you're going to leave, aren't you?" The question caught Emily in her throat. She bent down, gently touching his hand. "No, I have no plans like that, but everyone doesn't like you anymore. I hear them talking about you behind your back. Are you sad?" Emily smiled faintly, but her eyes could not hide their weariness. "A little, but the important thing is, you and I are still here, right?" Noah nodded, then suddenly hugged her tightly. Not for long, but long enough for Emily to feel the quiet desperation in his small heart. Since his mother's passing, this was perhaps the first time he feared losing someone else. The next day, Emily discovered that Noah's morning therapy session had been canceled without prior notice. When she asked Martha, she was told the schedule was adjusted at Kendra's request. Breakfast was moved to be with a new private nurse Kendra had hired. Emily was instructed not to participate to avoid diluting professional methods. The library was locked. The backyard playground was suddenly under maintenance. Gradually, Emily was being cut off from all meaningful activities with Noah. Like a shadow stripped of function, Noah began to react. He grew angry when forced to eat with the new nurse, throwing his spoon to the floor and curling up like a hedgehog backed into a corner. Emily could hear the faint knocks on his door every evening, the stifled cries, and the sharp sound of objects being thrown and breaking. Yet she was not allowed to enter. Each time she asked, Martha replied coldly that everything was handled according to protocol. By the third night, Emily awoke to a very soft knock at her door. She opened it to find Noah standing before her, unsteady on his feet, eyes red from crying. "I want to sleep here," he whispered, voice trembling. Emily pulled him in, wrapped him in a blanket, soothing him as she had done many times before. She knew he was not afraid of the dark. He was afraid of being abandoned again. The next day, Dominic returned after 3 days of business travel. When he stepped inside, Emily was sitting with Noah on the sofa, both of them silent, as if simply being together was a way to resist the world. Dominic paused, his eyes sweeping the scene, then turned away without a word. He did not realize that his silence and distance had hurt the two people he cared for most. And Emily, though trying to remain steady, we began to understand that if she did not speak up, if she let the isolation continue, Noah would be the one most hurt. She could not let that happen again. The scandal erupted on a Monday morning, just as Dominic was leaving the basement gym, his phone ringing incessantly. The assistant in charge of urgent communications called, voice tense as a taut string. "You need to see the news immediately. There's an article about Noah and some sensitive images involving Emily Carter." Dominic hurried to his office and opened his laptop. On the homepage of a popular tabloid, the headline screamed in bold red letters, "The nanny seduces the city's most powerful mafia boss to control his disabled heir." Below were maliciously edited photos, Emily placing her hand on Dominic's shoulder in the hallway, Emily hugging Noah in the yard, another showing her smiling next to Dominic at a private party, all cropped to suggest they were exchanging secretive messages. The article was laced with provocative words like exploiting trust, emotional profiteering, accessing the boy for financial influence, and even cited a close source in the mansion implying that Emily had a prior fraud record in another state. Dominic felt his blood rush to his temples, not from fear of scandal, but from the sense of surveillance and manipulation. He sat still for a moment, then skimmed the photos, remembering each moment clearly. The times Emily hugged Noah were when he cried from nightmares. The photo of her touching his shoulder was when she informed him that Noah had a mild fever. He knew the truth. Yet the article twisted it into a weapon of defamation. Dominic stood, calling Jake. "I want every camera in the house checked. Every frame. Identify immediately who leaked these images." Jake asked no questions, merely acknowledged the order. Yet Dominic saw the simmering anger in his assistant's eyes. For those loyal to him knew Emily had never exploited anyone. She was simply the only person who had made Noah smile again. The news spread like wildfire. Reporters camped outside the mansion gates. Some social media accounts spreading rumors that Emily was pregnant with Dominic, that she was about to become the new boss. Kendra, outwardly composed, could not hide her quiet satisfaction. She appeared more often beside Dominic, advising that Emily be temporarily removed to avoid trouble. Dominic did not respond. He did not rush to decide. He observed, noting every reaction from Noah, who had been strangely withdrawn these past few days. The boy remained silent, refusing to eat, avoiding the dragon notebook he once treasured. When asked, he replied with a single sentence that startled Dominic. "If Miss Emily were bad, why would I still think of her every time I wake up?" Dominic began to sense something was wrong. He noticed the strange coincidence between times Emily was isolated and the movements of certain staff, particularly Kendra. One night, he secretly checked the internal communications email. In a series of leaked messages, there was evidence that photos from the security cameras had been illegally copied to an external hard drive. The request came from someone who had worked directly with Kendra. Dominic sat motionless, staring at the screen as if the world around him had changed shape. He slowly stood and looked out the office window. Outside, snow had begun to fall, blanketing the garden where Noah had once run after Emily with a dragon-painted kite. He no longer doubted. He knew someone in the house did not want Emily to stay. Not because she had done anything wrong, but because she had done too much right. And what is right, at times, threatens even those forces that have long existed in the shadows. Dominic picked up his phone, this time calling his personal lawyer directly. "I need a review of all senior staff. Every transaction, every report, starting today." The lawyer on the other line asked nothing further. Dominic, for the first time in many years, felt the anger of a father more than a boss. And for the first time, he no longer wanted to merely observe. He wanted to know who was trying to make Noah and Emily the victims. And this time, he would not allow it. 4 days after the scandal broke, Emily had not once left her room on the second floor. Dominic had not ordered her confinement. But the scrutinizing glances from staff, the deliberate whispers as she passed the halls, and Dominic's own prolonged silence made Emily understand that remaining quiet was the safest choice. Each morning, she still looked after Noah from afar, through short notes to the nurse or the new assistant Kendra had appointed, but she was forbidden direct contact. Each night, she sat by the window, the snow-covered garden once filled with their laughter, now a cold, empty void. Then one morning, Jake knocked on her door, face serious but not cold. "The master requests you escort Noah to the therapy center." Emily looked up, almost in disbelief. "Me, Dominic says no one else gets the boy to cooperate besides you." Emily asked no further, simply nodded. A wave of unnameable emotion rose within her, not hope, nor quite relief, but the feeling of finally being back where she needed to be. The therapy center was in the northern suburbs, nearly an hour's drive from the mansion. The familiar black SUV carried them through rows of trees shedding their winter leaves. Noah sat beside Emily on the back seat, holding the dragon notebook he had forgotten for almost a week. As soon as the car started moving, he whispered, "I thought you were leaving." Emily held his small hand, squeezing gently. "I told you. I stay for you." Noah did not smile, but his eyes softened. Along the way, he rested his head on her shoulder, as if mere contact could dissolve all unease. At the therapy center, the psychologist led them to a specialized room, equipped with tools for cognitive and physical development for special needs children. Before beginning, the doctor asked Dominic, who was standing in the corner, a simple question: "Should we focus on motor skills or emotions today?" Dominic looked to Emily for guidance. She quietly answered, "Today. Let Noah choose." The boy heard her, lifted his head, and said clearly, "I want to walk and draw dragons." Everyone laughed softly. For the next 2 hours, Emily did not take her eyes off Noah. She encouraged him each time he lifted a foot from the floor. guided him to the mural wall where he colored a dragon flying over icy mountains. Dominic, though speaking little, observed the entire process. And for the first time, he saw that Noah was not striving for the doctor or adult expectations, but for himself, because beside him was someone who made him believe he was worth the effort. After therapy, they stopped at a small roadside diner. Noah was hungry after the exercises, and Emily ordered chicken soup with toast, the same as when he had first eaten at the gala years ago. Dominic sat opposite them, no longer watchful, but carrying a quiet remorse. "I apologize for not protecting you sooner," he said, voice low. Emily shook her head. "I don't need you to protect me. I just hope you trust me." Dominic nodded slightly. "I let silence harm those I care about." At that moment, Noah lifted his spoon mid-air. "I don't like it when people speak badly about Miss Emily. She's not a bad person." The atmosphere at the table softened. Dominic lightly patted his son's shoulder, then looked at Emily. "You'll continue therapy with Noah, won't you? As long as he needs me." Emily smiled. "I will be there." That afternoon, on the drive back to the mansion, Dominic chose to sit beside Noah and Emily rather than at a distance as usual. Along the way, they read together one of the dragon stories Noah had written. Dominic listened to every word, occasionally smiling, and when Noah dozed off, resting against Emily, Dominic whispered almost as a confession, "Perhaps I need you as much as he does." Emily did not respond. She simply watched the child sleeping peacefully, her heart feeling a little lighter, as though a door had just reopened, and this time, she was no longer outside it. While Dominic began to reopen his heart to Emily and Noah, elsewhere in Seattle, a hidden scheme was taking shape in the shadows. Kendra was not someone to accept failure easily, especially when the position beside Dominic, the one she had carefully maintained for 7 years, was threatened by the arrival of a woman with no status, no influence, and no clear past. She had once believed that a scandal, a single planted seed of doubt, would make Dominic turn away as he had with so many others. But this time, she had misjudged the heart of a father, and more than that, she had underestimated the quiet determination of a woman like Emily. That failure turned Kendra's resentment into something dangerous. She began reconnecting with old contacts, including Salvatore Russo, the head of a rival Mafia branch with whom Dominic had clashed violently years ago. Under the guise of a real estate investor, Russo had previously attempted to take over the southern port by bribing local authorities, only to be thwarted by Dominic's discreet legal counterattack, which cost him millions and severely damaged his underground reputation. That hatred had never faded. Kendra approached Russo not to negotiate, but to exchange. In a discreetly rented upscale restaurant, she placed a thick envelope before him, containing copies of Noah's therapy schedule, the mansion's security schematics, and the names of the drivers responsible for the boy's daily transport. "I am not asking you to kill anyone," she said, eyes fixed on him. "I just want the boy to disappear long enough for Dominic to suspect that the girl is an insider. Once you have broken his trust, I will handle the rest." Russo leaned back, chuckling hoarsely. "Do you think kidnapping a child from Dominic D'Angelo's house is simple? Not simple, but necessary," Kendra replied sharply. "If you succeed, Dominic will be disoriented, and I will be the only one calm enough to remain beside him." Russo was pensive. After a pause, he nodded. "I make no promises about injuries, but if Dominic kneels, I will leave the rest to you." The plan was detailed to the minute. They did not intend to attack the mansion directly, guarded by 2 layers of security, but would strike during Noah's next therapy session, when the escort would be thinner and Dominic's attention diverted to internal investigations. They hired 3 professional shooters who had previously worked in personal security, disguising them as therapy staff, using an ambulance with legitimate plates, prepared for all diversion tactics. Kendra secretly altered the therapy schedule, reassigned Jake from his escort duty that day with a forged email from Dominic, requesting him to attend an urgent meeting. She even instructed the driver privately that Emily does not need to accompany them, to avoid distracting Noah. Everything was set like a chess game. each move designed to undermine Emily's place in Dominic's trust. If Noah disappeared, Emily, the last person to have close contact with him, would appear the most suspicious. Even without clear evidence, a hint of doubt would prevent Dominic from protecting her. Then, Kendra would be the sole person remaining beside him, patiently waiting as she had for years. Meanwhile, Emily remained unaware. She spent the evening reviewing new games to prepare for Noah, organizing the dragon notebook neatly, and writing a small note on the first page. "You are the strongest knight I've ever known. You don't need dragons. You can still fly with your heart." Dominic, still busy with the internal investigation, sent a brief message. "Thank you for not giving up. Tomorrow, go with Noah. He needs you." Emily smiled at the message, completely unaware that tomorrow, their world would face a storm no one was truly prepared for. The next morning, the Seattle sky was gray, mist hanging over the road leading to the therapy center. Emily sat in the back seat of the SUV, Noah beside her, clutching the dragon notebook. Dominic was busy in meetings and could not go, but he repeatedly instructed her over the phone to call him immediately when the session ended. Jake, assigned elsewhere, under the pretext of the urgent meeting, was replaced by 2 new security staff Emily had never met. Yet everything seemed normal. The journey was smooth. Noah sat obediently, excitedly talking about the new drawing exercises, while the driver smiled through the mirror. "We'll arrive earlier than usual." When the car stopped in front of the center, the parking lot was unusually empty. Only a small truck with a medical service logo parked nearby. Emily took Noah's hand as they stepped out, unaware that everything had already been orchestrated. Inside the therapy room, "Doctor," Lisa greeted them with her familiar smile. But minutes later, as Noah practiced walking on the wooden bar, Emily glimpsed the shadows of 2 strange men passing by the frosted window outside. A chill ran down her spine, and she froze. "Lisa, do we have any other patients today?" "No, just Noah." The answer barely left her lips when the center's door burst open, and screams filled the air. 2 men in black coats stormed in, guns concealed in their sleeves. "No one move," one shouted. While the other advanced toward the therapy room, Lisa panicked, clutching the files, and Emily immediately shielded Noah, pulling him into a corner, her voice trembling but firm. "Stay still. Noah, don't move." Heavy footsteps echoed, followed by the sharp metallic crack of shattering glass. The D'Angelo guards reacted quickly, drawing their guns. But the attackers were clearly professional. They split into 2 groups, one blocking the exit, the other approaching the therapy area. "They want Noah." Emily's mind flashed like lightning. She looked around, grabbed anything she could use for defense, snatching Noah's practice cane, gripping it tightly. A tall man approached, gun aimed directly at the corner where she and Noah hid. Without thinking, Emily lunged, striking his arm with all her strength, using the cane. The gun misfired, embedding in the wall. Smoke billowing, the man screamed in pain, shoving her to the floor. Yet she still wrestled the gun from him. Noah screamed in terror, tears streaming. In that moment, sirens echoed faintly in the distance, then fell silent. The attackers knew reinforcements were coming, and intensified their effort. Another man charged, aiming his gun straight at Noah. Everything happened in mere seconds. Emily sprang up, without hesitation, shielding the boy as another gunshot rang out. The room shook violently. She felt a crushing force like a hammer to her side. Her breath caught, then a burning sensation under her clothes. Noah clung to her, screaming, "Miss Emily." Before the attackers could respond further, gunfire erupted from the hallway. Jake and Dominic's team of guards stormed in, shots precise and sharp. 2 of the attackers were downed. A third tried to flee, but was blocked by Marco at the door. The air was thick with gunpowder. Glass shattered, blood spreading across the floor. Dominic arrived just minutes later, face pale as he saw Emily slumped in Noah's arms, the boys crying hoarse from terror, while Emily, still conscious, whispered, The boy is safe. Don't let anyone touch him. Dominic knelt. Trembling hands pressed to her wounds. Blood seeping through his fingers. Call an ambulance. Right now, he shouted. But Emily gripped his hand weakly. They wanted Noah. Someone in the house leaked the information. Dominic said nothing, only resting his forehead against hers. You will be okay. Emily. I promise. Sirens wailed outside. Red lights flashing through the broken windows. She smiled wearily, murmuring, Thank you for trusting me. Then her eyes closed. Her breathing thinning. Dominic lifted her with both hands, carrying her out of the room amid the shouts of emergency responders. Noah still cried, reaching for her. And Dominic only said one thing. Like a vow, I will find whoever did this, and I will not let her be lost. Outside, the gray sky had turned to rain. The ambulance sped through wet streets, water splashing in torrents. Dominic sat beside the stretcher, holding Emily's hand tightly, eyes fixed ahead. Something had just broken inside him. Yet at the same time, a flame ignited that could not be extinguished. He had lost his wife once. He would not lose another woman to someone else's cruelty. Noah, sitting between Jake's arms in the rear of the ambulance, kept repeating like a prayer. Miss Emily will not leave me, she promised. Emily was taken straight into surgery at a private hospital partially owned by Dominic. The operation lasted over 3 hours. The bullet grazed her left rib, causing serious soft tissue damage, but, fortunately, spared her heart and lungs. Dominic did not leave the hospital hallway for a single moment, standing in his soaked black shoes before the emergency room door, gaze intense, not in fear, but in anger. That anger was silent, cold as stone, yet sharper than any blade. When the doctor emerged, announcing that Emily would survive, Dominic said nothing, simply nodded, then turned and dialed. Jake, assemble everyone. Within 24 hours. I want to know who ordered this and who inside the house allowed them in. His voice was not loud, yet so cold that Jake responded with only one word, understood. At the same time, Dominic personally went to the detention center where the 3 attackers were being held by the police for investigation. Thanks to his extensive connections both inside and outside the system, he quickly secured private access to each of them in a dark room without cameras. The first one revealed nothing. Dominic said not a word, only stared into his eyes. And in that gaze, there was no ordinary threat, only an unmistakable promise of something far worse than death. The second surrendered after 5 minutes. Russo. It was Salvatore Russo. He hired us. He said the boy was a valuable hostage to make you kneel. Dominic stood, ease unblinking. My value is Emily, and Noah is my soul. And he chose both wrong. That night, Dominic summoned the entire high council of his underground network to the mansion. The meeting took place in the stone-walled basement, a place only those absolutely trusted had ever set foot. He stood in the center, his long coat still carrying the scent of Emily's blood, eyes sharp as blades. Russo has crossed the line. He didn't just touch me. He targeted a child and an innocent woman. Tonight, I ask for no consensus. I give orders. From now on, anyone connected to Russo or his men is an enemy. A chilling silence swept through the room. Then nods of agreement followed. Dominic turned away, cold and composed. No need to bang the table or shout. His power lay not in volume, but in the absolute certainty of his resolve. Within 36 hours, Russo's empire began to crumble. Money laundering companies were frozen, insiders exposed, and the clandestine shipping operations at the southern port were revealed and handed over to authorities. Russo attempted a counterattack but was too late. Dominic acted decisively, allowing no one room for compromise. Meanwhile, Emily remained unconscious in the ICU. Dominic took over her role with Noah, bringing him to therapy, reading the pages in his dragon notebook, and every night letting him sleep beside him so he would never feel abandoned again. The boy said nothing of his mother, only quietly added new drawings to his notebook, a small knight holding tightly to a woman lying on a bed. surrounded by rows of dragons standing guard. When Emily awoke, the first light she saw was not the hospital ceiling but Dominic's eyes. He held her hand, once cold as ice, now gripping as if letting go would make her vanish. "You are safe," he said hoarsely. "Noah is okay, and from now on, no one can harm you." Emily's lips moved weakly like mist. "Do you know who did this?" Dominic nodded. "Hiding nothing. I know, and I've dealt with it. But there is one who remains." He stood, stepping toward the door. Moments later, Kendra was brought in, hands tied behind her back, her usual arrogance gone. Dominic stood in the center, voice decisive as a hammer striking stone. "From this moment, you no longer belong to the D'Angelo family. You betrayed a child, a woman, and someone who trusted you. Remove her from this place, permanently." As the door closed, Dominic returned to Emily's bedside. For the first time, he spoke words long lodged in his chest like a heavy stone. "I don't just want to protect you. I want you to stay, to remain, a part of my family, of Noah, and of me." Emily looked at him, tears sliding down her pale cheeks. She said nothing, only nodded. And Dominic understood this time. They would not lose each other again. Emily was transferred back to the mansion to continue her recovery after 2 weeks in the hospital. The room prepared for her had been transformed, no longer a temporary lodging for an employee. It had become part of the house, filled with care and attention from those who were family. Dominic personally oversaw the windows being repaired, replaced all the curtains, and laid a soft blue rug Emily had once mentioned reminded her of the sky back home. Noah drew a large picture and placed it above her bed, showing 3 people holding hands amidst a flock of flying dragons, all smiling. In the first days after returning, Emily was still weak, but her smile gradually returned. Dominic spent more time with her, not merely as a master concerned for the recovery of someone harmed for his family, but as a man learning to love again. Slowly and sincerely, they took their time. Every lunch on the veranda, every afternoon tea Dominic prepared. Each night a book quietly placed beside her bed were small signs of his own way of opening his heart. Emily, still nursing residual fears, no longer avoided his gaze. They looked at each other longer, in silence, but more deeply. One evening, when Emily was well enough to walk in the garden, Dominic guided her to the long chair beside the small koi pond that Noah loved. The moon was high, the wind crisp, and the stillness enveloped them, as if the world were holding its breath for what was about to be said. Dominic sat beside her, hand resting lightly over hers, a gesture neither forced nor hurried, but long anticipated. "I once thought I could control everything: money, power, Noah's safety. But you arrived and taught me that sometimes the most precious things cannot be controlled, only chosen to be cherished." Emily tilted her head, looking at him, her gaze soft but earnest. "And I once thought I would always remain on the sidelines. But Noah showed me that I am not just his caregiver. I am part of his world. And in that world, you are the center." Dominic squeezed her hand tighter. "I love you, Emily, not because you saved Noah, but because you showed me I can still believe in goodness, that I am not just someone who gives orders, controls, and punishes, that I can learn again to listen, to love, to be gentle." Emily's eyes brimmed, but with relief and gratitude. "I love you too, no matter who you are to the world. To me, you are the first man brave enough to face loss without fleeing, and I want to be with you, no matter what comes next." Those words felt like the final door opening. Without another word, Dominic pulled her close, holding her as if he had finally found where he belonged. From the upper balcony, Noah watched quietly, then smiled. The next morning, the boy ran into the living room, pulling Dominic and Emily close, holding out a piece of paper scrawled with childish writing. "Official dragon family. 3 members. 1 dragon father, 1 dragon mother, and 1 dragon child." Dominic laughed, and Emily hugged Noah. "So we have a name," she said, tears welling from happiness. Dominic nodded. "And this time, no one can separate us again." Within the once cold and fortified mansion, a new family had formed, not through power or blood, but through love, loyalty, and wounds healed by kindness and courage. Emily was no longer an outsider. Dominic was no longer a solitary boss. And Noah, the child once trapped in his own world, finally had a true home. That morning, all the mansion staff were summoned to the grand living room by Dominic's direct order. This had never happened before, in an organization operating with the strictest underground hierarchy like the D'Angelo household. Everyone knew their duties without reminder. So Dominic's demand that all work cease and everyone be present at 8 o'clock sharp cast the mansion into a quiet tension. Martha stood by the door, hands clasped, eyes contemplative. The gardeners, cooks, guards, even the logistics team were all present, gathered in small groups across the cold marble floor. No one spoke. Everyone waited, anticipating something important about to be declared. Precisely on time, Dominic entered from the rear hallway, his stride decisive, dark suit standing out against the white bright space. Behind him, Emily followed in a soft cream dress, her face still pale from recovery, but her gaze steady. She was no longer the quiet woman lurking backstage, but standing tall, her hand lightly holding Dominic's as a clear sign that her place in the house had changed. Dominic ascended the central steps of the room, scanning every face, then spoke in a deep, even, and unmistakable voice. "I have called you here, not to announce work matters, but to speak of loyalty, courage, and what makes a true family." He paused briefly, his gaze resting on a few faces that had stood with Kendra during the time Emily had been isolated. Recently, some among us have forgotten the most important thing under this roof: to protect the vulnerable, uphold honor, and live with kindness and integrity. A few have done the opposite. They aided the enemy, spread lies, manipulated trust, and caused serious harm to my family. But today, I do not speak of them. Today, I want to speak of the woman who chose to stand when everyone turned away, who shielded my son with her own body, and with unwavering determination, held fast the heart of my boy and mine as well. All eyes turned to Emily. Some bowed their heads. Others could not hide the guilt in their expressions. Dominic stepped back, leaving Emily to step forward alone. Her voice was not loud, but clear and steady. "I am here not to be praised or forgiven. I know there were times I was just a stranger entering your space, disrupting routines, unsettling the order. I do not blame anyone, but I believe that if we work in the same house, care for the same child, and protect the same man, we should at least learn to trust in goodness." She looked at Dominic, who nodded gently, then turned back to everyone. "I do not ask to be loved. I only ask to be respected, not because I am special, but because I chose to stay when I could have walked away." The room was so silent that the faint rustle of wind through the tall windows could be heard. After a moment, Martha was the first to step forward. She paused before Emily, placed a hand over her heart, and quietly said, "I am sorry I did not see this sooner." Then she turned to Dominic. "She is the finest woman ever to step into this house." Sire, the oppressive air seemed to lift. One by one, groups of staff began to nod, then approached Emily to shake her hand, some bowing slightly, others simply smiling. Dominic stepped forward, wrapping his arms around her shoulders in front of everyone. "From today," he said, "Emily Carter is no longer an employee. She is part of the D'Angelo family. She will be present in every decision, every plan, and everything that affects my life and Noah's." His words closed the meeting but opened a new chapter in a house once cold for lack of trust. Emily was no longer a shadow behind the kitchen door. She was a woman recognized for her resilience and unconditional love. From that moment, everyone in the house understood that they were not merely welcoming a companion, they were witnessing the heart of the family itself. One early spring afternoon, as fresh green shoots began to appear along the stone paths in the backyard. Noah sat at a small wooden table beneath the red maple he adored. Beside him lay a thick notebook now bound with a new cover. Colored pencils scattered around, and a few crumpled sheets. Emily sat across from him, gently stirring a cup of warm cocoa. Her gaze tender on the child, concentrating so intently on his writing. A few steps away, Dominic leaned against a tree, arms crossed, silently observing as if he did not want to disturb a single moment. Noah had changed greatly. He spoke more, laughed more, and his eyes held a rare light safety, trust, and a love that required no verification. Emily leaned slightly and asked softly, "Which dragon is today's story about?" Noah did not look up, still absorbed in coloring the border. The sky dragon. It lived alone atop a high mountain where no one dared to go because of the cold winds and thunder. Everyone feared it. But really, it was only lonely. Emily smiled, sensing a piece of Noah's soul being woven into each line. And then what happened? Noah paused, looked up, eyes sparkling. Then one day, a woman came. She wasn't afraid. She didn't harm it. She just sat down, wrapped her scarf around its legs to keep it warm. And then the dragon realized it wasn't scary. It just needed someone to believe it was worthy of love. Dominic swallowed, hearing each word, feeling as if his own old wounds were being touched. Noah closed the notebook, stood, and ran to Emily, handing her the finished dragon story. "I'm done writing, and you are the main character." Emily took it, moved beyond words, clutching the boy tightly. He looked up hesitantly. "Can I call you Mom? Not because I've forgotten my real mother, but because I want a mom now." Emily did not answer immediately. She looked at Dominic. He nodded, slowly stepping forward, placing his hand on both of them. "We are not replacing anyone," he said softly. "We are simply continuing the story that was left unfinished." Emily bent down, holding Noah tightly, crying for the first time, not from pain, but because her heart had finally found where it belonged. "Then from today, you will be my son. Noah, not on paper, but in every way you need. And even in the moments you need nothing more than a hug." In the following days, Noah's dragon story was turned into a small book, the cover drawn by him, with a dedication on the back written in his childish script, "For Mom Emily, who gave me wings to fly." Dominic placed the book on the shelf in his office, alongside million-dollar contracts and strategic plans, as a symbol that true love need not be grandiose. Noah now called Emily Mom naturally, and each time he did, Dominic smiled. He had never thought he could have a family again, but Emily arrived, not knocking, not demanding, only with trust and a warm heart, and quietly stayed. One late evening, when Emily entered the living room and saw Dominic reviewing the dragon story, she sat beside him. He said softly, "I think the boy needs more than a mother. He needs a home." Emily rested her head on his shoulder, and Dominic was silent for a moment, then replied softly, "I need both." That night, the house, once filled with the sounds of power and command, held only the gentle rustle of pages, the steady breathing of a boy dreaming of dragons, and the synchronized heartbeats of two adults who had endured loss yet still believed that love could begin anew whenever their hearts dared to open again. One sunny morning, the backyard of the D'Angelo mansion was filled with birdsong and the gentle scent of grass and flowers. Dominic stood beside the wooden table where Emily was carefully laying out breakfast, while Noah ran around with makeshift dragon wings strapped to his back. That morning's meal was not a grand event. No guests, no ceremony, no negotiations like those that usually took place in Dominic's world. Yet for him, it was more important than anything, for this was the first morning he felt the house was no longer a cold fortress, but truly a home. Dominic placed his hand on Emily's shoulder as she set down a plate of toast. She looked at him and smiled. "We're like a real family now, aren't we?" Dominic nodded, eyes softer than ever. "Not like, you are already part of us. You're part of us." The words were not merely an affirmation. but a profound promise from a man who had lost too much to know that the most precious thing in life is not power, but those who choose to stay by your side against all odds. Noah climbed onto a chair, holding his dragon book high. "I will write the next chapter," the boy exclaimed excitedly, "where the 3 dragons, Mother Dragon, and Dragon Child fly to a new land where no one has to be afraid anymore." Emily hugged him, smiling. "And how will they live there?" Noah thought for a moment, then replied firmly, "They will live happily, because they trust each other." Dominic squeezed Emily's hand lightly, silently conveying that their imaginary story was the life they were living every day. No castles, no titles, only trust and sincere love. Every shared meal, every bedtime hug, every time the boy called her mom without hesitation, became the pieces that made a real family. The story of Dominic, Emily, and Noah was not just one of forgiveness or redemption. It was proof that sometimes the things that seem most broken can be assembled into a breathtakingly beautiful picture if we dare to believe in goodness, give someone a second chance, and open our hearts once more after hurt. Emily was never born to be the wife of a mafia boss. Dominic never imagined he would love a woman from outside his world. But precisely because of their differences, they helped each other remember what both had long forgotten: love does not discriminate based on past, status, or origin. Love requires only sincerity and the willingness to face life's storms together. And so, what do you think about their deeply emotional journey? Have you ever been in a situation like Emily's, misunderstood, pushed to the sidelines, yet choosing to stay, to hold on to what is right? Or have you ever felt like Dominic, strong to the point of loneliness, until someone stepped in and helped you feel again what it truly means to have a heart? Please share your feelings in the comments below. We truly hope to hear your sincere thoughts from the heart, because it is exactly those reflections that motivate the Underworld Love Stories channel to continue bringing touching, human stories that resonate deeply with viewers. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like, and share this video with your friends and family so we can spread these warm stories together amid the busyness of life. We will continue to bring many more moving stories every day, featuring inspiring characters and journeys through adversity toward true happiness. Thank you for listening all the way to the end of today's video. We wish you abundant health, a peaceful heart, and a life filled with joy and serenity every day. We'll see you in the next video on the Underworld Love Stories channel. Goodbye.